They're two happy women bringing you inspiring stories, politics, pop culture, and lifestyle hacks, all with an eye to making our communities and our country a better place to live. It's the Happy Women Podcast with your hosts, Jen Horn and Katie Gorak.
The Department of Education is crumbling, but that's okay because organizations like PragerU and local school districts are there to pick up pieces and make things better for our kids. That's just one of the things we're going to talk about today on the Happy Women Podcast. I'm Jennifer Horn.
And I'm Katie Gorak.
And so excited. This is someone that I have known for a long time and have been so excited to just watch the incredible things that are happening over at PragerU, an incredible organization run and founded by Dennis Prager. And our guest today, the CEO of PragerU, Marissa Strait, is here. And Marissa, thanks so much for being here. She's also got a podcast of her own. It's called Real Talk with Marissa Strait. So make sure you check that one out in addition to this podcast. But the true epitome of a happy woman. Marissa, thanks so much for being here. And thanks so much for what you do. You've been doing such an amazing job with PragerU.
It is such an honor to be here with you. And I am a very happy woman right now because I get to talk to you amazing ladies.
Well, we're going to talk about that. I think first and foremost, everybody has been so concerned about Dennis. And I think it's probably appropriate to start there with an update on him because there is some good news. A recovery like this after such a traumatic fall, it takes a lot of time. But Dennis is a fighter with one of the most amazing spirits that I know. How is he doing?
Well, Dennis is a fighter, and he is not just a fighter. I truly believe that America's prayers that have been coming in from really everywhere have been listened to. And so we read to Dennis all the letters that everybody's been sending to him, and it's just empowering him in a way that I don't even know that any medicine can do. And so he needs the prayers and keep them coming because it's very encouraging. No, Dennis has such a powerful mind. And for many years, we've known Dennis for his intellect and his ability to be so succinct and clear about his thoughts. But his brain is so much more powerful than that. And that's what I've learned about Dennis over the last few months since the injury. His perseverance, his love of life, his focus on getting better, on getting back to us. Every time I see him, he just talks about how he wants to teach again when he gets back on radio. And so we've seen another side of Dennis's mental strength and intellect and just the amazing brain of Dennis Prager is now in full force as he is trying to recover so that he can come back and help us save America again.
That's right.
So I have to say during this process, because, Sebastian and I have been watching it every single day, praying for Dennis. I happened to watch the Christopher Reeve movie about his life during this time, which really underscores the seriousness of the spinal cord injuries. So, for anybody who doesn't really understand what happened to Dennis, now his was sort of 1 degree less severe than what happened to Christopher Reeve, who I think suffered a complete severance of the spinal cord or a complete break, which Dennis did not, thank you, God. So that's just a sort of moving element to the story. Okay, let's turn to you, Marissa. You have such an amazing background. I didn't know these things about you. You have such an interesting history and how you got to where you are today. So before we jump in and talk about PragerU, will you just tell us a little bit about your story and how you got here?
Wow. Okay. So I have, as you said, a very complicated background. So I'm an American. I was born here in Los Angeles. I still call it the belly of the beast. Little did I realize when I was born here, where Amen. I was born into. With that said, any place in America is the greatest place on God's green earth. And I learned that very quickly in my youth because I was raised in the Middle East. And so I was an American kid raised in Israel. And I ended up serving in the Israeli military in an intelligence unit. And I got a special dispensation given that I was still an American, but somehow they put me through a bunch of tests and figure out what to do with me. I was always a bit of a troublemaker. And so sometimes my type of trouble is welcome because I'm able to look at things from a different perspective. And that is essentially what I ended up doing here at PragerU, trying to disrupt the education market and the media market and look at things differently. And so maybe we can thank my upbringing in Israel and my service in Israeli intelligence that really kind of catapulted that sense of looking at things from a different perspective. So after serving in the Israeli military for 2 years, I came back to America. And boy, did I kiss the ground. I just love America so much. And I think that sometimes when you're raised outside of your country, you realize how incredible America is. And that was the case for me. And so when I came back to the States, I went to college and I heard a bunch of kids, studying Howard Zinn and hating on America. I was just in shock. I mean, you must be kidding me. You must travel the world. You must see how incredible this place is. How can you talk about this great country in such a way? And so after getting my degree in business from UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles, I ended up going into education because I loved teaching and I loved working with kids. And frankly, I loved teaching that we live in this great country. I wanted young people to know that. And so I got my master's in education. I taught for a few years, K through 8th grade. I ended up running a school. And that was when I became a little more political. And I became political because I realized that I was effectively teaching lies because of what I was taught in ed school. I remember, and I still confess oftentimes, I taught Al Gore's Inconvenient Truths because I loved the earth. And teachers were told that if you love the earth and you don't want to drink polluted water, then you better teach Al Gore's curriculum in schools. And so one thing after another started hitting me, and I realized that our schools have become political indoctrination centers. The teachers' unions, the teacher seminaries, they brainwash teachers to believe that what is good is what's progressive. And that is essentially not true because, really what is good is what is patriotic and American. Not everything about America is perfect, but this is a great country. And so to wrap it all up in this kind of interesting journey that I went through, and I ended up meeting Dennis Prager and Alan Estrin. The three of us sat down at a cafe in Glendale, and we talked about how do we really bring penicillin to the American mind? How do we cure America from this disease of self-hatred and of big government and of Marxist education? And from that came this little idea 13 years ago of PragerU, Prager University. And thanks to many people, PragerU is now a big enterprise. We reach over 28 million unique visitors to our website every year. We have billions of views every year. And now we're in 10 different states. We have partnerships with states that that we produce our educational content for, and we see our content in schools. And so that's essentially my background.
It's such an incredible story, and what you have done with PragerU, and I guess we can give a little credit to Alan and Dennis too, but the way that you've reached young people is really showing up. I mean, if you look at some of the polling, especially in this last election, college students are probably more conservative, arguably, than they have been in decades, which is incredible news. And there's also, you're filling the void, I think, with young people, with kids, reaching them at some of the younger stages so that parents can really use PragerU as a resource to supplement some of the public education that they're getting. And I think it's phenomenal. So with the dismantling of the Department of Education, I know you were there. You have to tell us about that. You were in Washington, D.C. What do you think that means for schools now? How do you think education should look? How should it work in this country? I mean, I tend to believe local is better, but I also live in Los Angeles, as you mentioned, and you go, okay, is local going to be any better? But how do you see this laying out, and what was that like to be there?
So, just to your comment about giving the credit to Dennis Prager and Alan Estrin and tying this to why I think dismantling of the Department of Education is so important. Young people are intellectually starving. They're starving of meaning and they're starving of knowledge, and they realize that they're not being taught what ought to be taught. They realize that something is wrong. Why do their friends have no discernment? Why is there no common sense? Why can't they read and understand what they're reading? True literacy is not just putting the words together, but it's actually comprehending what you're reading.
Sure.
And so they're looking around and they're saying, how is it that billions of dollars, $268 billion to be exact last year, how is it that billions of dollars are being spent by the Department of Education with very, very little to show for it? And so last year, actually on April Fool's Days, April 1st, I posted on Instagram a joke saying that I'm flying to DC to dismantle the Department of Education. I'll be back in 4 weeks. And I can't even tell you, thousands of parents actually thought it was real. And they were saying, congratulations, this is the best thing that could ever happen to us. And we all know Ronald Reagan tried to dismantle the Department of Education, knowing that the Department of Education was really created as a partnership with Jimmy Carter, supporting the teachers' unions, the NEA, the National Educators Assembly. And you can look it up if you don't know about this very important historical moment. It was essentially a broker deal between the unions, the government, and you know who got the short end of the stick? The parents and the teachers. And so while Ronald Reagan tried to dismantle the Department of Education and couldn't because he could not muster enough support behind it, now that it's morning in America again, we will make sure that darkness doesn't come back. And how do we do that? We need to make sure that we support the administration in making this large move. And when I mentioned $268 billion, think about how many people will not want to give up those funds. Now, some of the funds are very important. I'm not saying that no money should be distributed whatsoever. The Pell Grants will remain. There's still going to be support for inner city schools. There's still going to be support. Title IX can still be a significant part of the government, but it does not need to be under the DOE. It can go back to the justice system. Many of the funds that are distributed to the states can go straight out of the Treasury. The problem that we have with the DOE and why dismantling it is so significant is because you have two heads to one snake. And so whenever there is waste, you cannot figure out how to untangle it because every head blames the other head. It's so convoluted that you just don't know where the money is going. All you know is that it is going. It's being wasted. And so cleaning up the bureaucracy must happen in order for us to stop wasting money and really kneecapping the teachers' unions. The teachers' unions, and I'm not talking about the localized teachers' unions. People need to understand that there is a difference. There are the localized teachers' unions, and then there are the big behemoths, the AFD and the NEAs, who are constantly propagating progressive and oftentimes extremely radical left-wing ideologies into the teachers' classrooms. If I have a minute, I'll give you an example. 2 years ago, it's 3 years ago now, in 2022, I got a hold of the NEA, the National Educators Assembly agenda. And this is basically what they were mentoring the teachers to teach. Guess what their number one issue of business was in 2022?
All right, guys, there's something that we all can't avoid, and that is aging. And, as we age, you know what happens. We're all dealing with more aches and pains, thinning hair, wrinkling skin. Even our nails start to get more brittle. So I want to tell you about this product that Katie and I have been using. It is called Revive from Brightcore Nutrition. It's easy to mix. That's really the best part. No chunky, powdery things that float around in your drink. No, easy to mix. Multi-collagen powder helps strengthen your bones and joints. And the best thing about Revive is that it works from the inside out. It's also going to help you rejuvenate your skin, help you grow back thicker, healthier, shinier hair, and strengthen your brittle nails. Revive is special because it contains 5 types of collagen, hyaluronic acid, biotin, vitamin C, and they all work synergistically to make you look and feel younger than ever. It's all natural, non-GMO, and we love it, 100% made in the USA. Today, exclusive for Happy Women listeners and viewers, you can get 25% off with the code HAPPYWOMEN by going to mybrightcore.com/happywomen, or you can call Brightcore. In fact, they prefer it for up to 50% off, free shipping, and a special free gift. Give them a call right now, 888-927-5980, and their educated staff will make sure that Revive is right for you. 888-927-5980.
Yes.
DEI.
All right, Katie, come on. What do you think the number one issue of business was In 2022, Becky Pringle, the NEA.
Was it something to do with COVID?
Fair guess. Their number one issue of business in 2022, the teachers' unions in America, was the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Wow.
Now, you tell me that this is not a politicized group, a politicized union. And so to have the NEA partner with the Department of Education on virtually everything, that should say everything to you. That should explain to you why kids in America cannot read, or why the numeracy rates are failing us. Because the Department of Education that has worked hand in hand with these behemoth teachers unions have not put children first ever. Everything has always been from day one about politicizing America's classrooms. And so the only way to fix this is to get rid of it. You get rid of the Department of Education. You save what is good and what works. While you're getting rid of it, you can make an assessment of what makes sense, whether the Pell Grants make sense, whether the Title I grants make sense, whether Title IX can be handled properly through the justice system. And then you basically clean up house, and then you start from scratch, and you start from where it makes sense. And so the celebration, and I'll call the executive order that I attended last week a celebration, because there were children there, and there were parents there, and there were smiles all over the place, because there is hope again that our money is not going to be wasted, and that America's future will actually have a chance. They'll get a real education. And where does PragerU come in? PragerU comes in educating the public with what I just said, because, people are being lied to, right? We have legacy media that, again, is in bed with these giant institutions. And there's so much fear mongering. I'll tell you, here in Los Angeles, I know parents that think that their public schools are going to be shut down in a month because they're not getting fun. That is not true. It's a lie. And so people like you and like us, in order to support the truth, we need to make sure that the truth is being shouted from the top of our lungs, so that people know that good things are happening.
So I've met countless young people who have said that they were, going along their merry lefty way until they happened to start listening to some PragerU videos, right? And then it really turned them around. So I'd love to know, from your perspective, what would you say have been some of the most impactful videos that you all have done? Can you name a few that you found just really resonated more than others?
Oh my gosh, it reminds me when my parents are asked which is their favorite child, and they can't pick. I think that some of our less political videos are actually the ones that change people's minds the most, because they really talk about humanity and goodness. And when I talk about the intellectual starvation that we're experiencing in America right now, I also talk about the God-sized hole in people's hearts, like the need for meaning. And so I think that many of our 5-minute videos and interviews that really talk about goodness and kindness and discernment and common sense and how do we live a better life, those are the ones that usually are the tip of the spear. These are the ones that people say, hey, that actually resonates with me. I actually just looked up an email that I received several years ago from a young woman named Julie Hartman, who ended up having the Dennis Prager and Julie Hartman show. And I saw Julie last week because now she actually works for the Department of Education. But for those who do not know who Julie Hartman is, she was a Harvard student who came across PragerU 5-minute videos on YouTube during the lockdowns. And she lives in Los Angeles, and you can just guess what her politics were. Going to Harvard, she was, seriously on the left. And when she started watching the PragerU videos, specifically the ones that talk about goodness and kindness and forgiveness and common sense and appreciation for our country, at the end of the day, Julie said, I don't want to grow up thinking that I live in a terrible country, because I can see that it is not true. Why am I being taught lies? And so really, out of Harvard, she was able to find the truth at PragerU And fast forward a bunch of years later, she is now part of the Department of Education, working herself out of a job in order to save other young Americans.
Yeah, she's fantastic. She worked in the same building down the hall, and I know how much Dennis meant to her. Watching that relationship actually unfold was really incredible. Dennis meant a lot to her and her evolution, and that's a great example of how PragerU has really changed lives. I got to ask you about school choice, because I had the most interesting guest on the morning show that I do in Los Angeles last week, who has maybe the best plan that I think for school choice. Because I think on the surface, many of us go, school choice sounds like a great idea, but it's very hard to imagine how it could be implemented. Some people think vouchers, but this gentleman is putting together a ballot initiative in California that would put together an educational savings account for every child born into the country, and that would take you, it'd only be used for education. It's not like a parent could dip into it and use it for a new car or, lunch at Starbucks or whatever it is, a dozen eggs these days. So you would use it for schooling, and anything that you had left over at the end of your high school career could be used for college or a trade school. Or if you had leftover, you could also give it back to a sibling, a younger sibling, for instance. So the parents don't touch it. The schools would still be competitive because they're trying to earn that money. How do you think school choice could be implemented? Do you think it's a possibility? Are you even a fan of it?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I actually had on my show Real Talk last week two people who agree with us that the Department of Education needs to be dismantled, but they don't necessarily agree on at what level of government should still remain in charge, I guess you would say, of education. And so some people will say that you should just remove the government entirely and not provide any sort of voucher or essentially what we call school choice, because that's still government intervention, right? The government still gets to kind of hover over who gets the funds and who doesn't. And there's still all these middle people who get to skim from the fat. On the other hand, as you see places like Florida and Arizona, people are loving school choice because at least there is some way to hold the government schools, or as people call them, public schools, accountable. You get to actually take your money and walk away when the schools fail your child. And so it's I don't think that there's ever going to be utopia. And I think that people need to understand that there isn't a perfect situation. Maybe the perfect situation is you raising your child and be able to homeschool them. But a lot of people can't homeschool their kids. And so I don't know that there is going to be any sort of system with government involved ever that isn't going to have some level of corruption, some level of waste. I mean, as Dennis Prager would say, the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. And so whenever you have government involved, there's going to be waste. And so I think that at least bringing it further down to the local level will eliminate some of the waste. And I think that every state will have to accommodate what the community needs. And the more the community can vote for what they need, the more say we will have. And probably it could become a little more efficient. But, there's no guarantee that we're going to get 100% efficiency.
So I loved one of your recent interviews was with a singer named Tom McDonald, which really, so he's a surprising character. Jen, have you heard the name?
It sounds familiar, yes. But fill me in.
All right. So I had not heard of him, but I went, and after listening to the interview, then I went and listened to the song. I guess it's his most recent song. And it's so beautiful. The tagline, I don't know if this is the title, "There's a man in the sky watching over me and you," which of course is a reference to God. But he's such an interesting character because on the one hand, he looks like a gang member. Like when you look at his face, he is top to bottom tattoos. And then he sings this beautiful, beautiful song about faith, but also going after the man, going after, all kinds of the political issues that we, really care about. Plus the setting was so interesting because he clearly lives on like a little farm, I guess. And that was really beautiful. So how did you find him? What made you want to do the interview with him? What about him drew you in?
I love it how now the mama bears are going to listen to rap because of Tom McDonald. Totally. And by the way, he totally deserves credit for that because he really is a beautiful human being. He really is. So PragerU is very interesting because at the end of the day, everybody is intellectually starving. And everybody wants to understand what is happening in our country. And everybody wants our country to be in a better place. And so we really attract people from all walks of life. And we've had Tom McDonald on, who's a rapper. We've had MMA fighters, Jorge Masvidal and Kobe Covington. I mean, these are people who never in my life as a mama bear did I think that I'd be hanging out with. But I do. And I think that is the magic of PragerU. And that is the magic of truth. And so Tom McDonald and PragerU have a lot in common. And that is that we have discernment, we're truth seekers, and we are artists and educators in so many ways. And so he is educating through his artistry millions of people, by the way. He has a massive following with the same message that America is great. You know, he came here from Canada and he, like me, both of us are kissing the ground of this country because we know what the alternative looks like. And so it's funny because, you know, here I was sitting with this guy with tattoos. He has dollar signs on his eyelids and his hair is out of control, if I may say so. But he is a beautiful human being. And you know what? He is beautiful because of what's in his heart and what's on his mind and how he's using these treasures that God has given him to do good. And so really, I feel like Tom and I have become like family. And it feels that way with a lot of people who seem like not the typical conservatives or not the typical PragerU followers, but that is the magic of PragerU. It's the magic of truth and it's the magic of goodness. And that has been what Dennis has been preaching for years.
And I think that's what's going to save us. And I think that's what's going to save this country. And I think President Trump knows it. And obviously groups like Turning Point USA, like PragerU, like President Trump have brought people into this tent that probably would have never been here before. And it's just seeking truth and turning down the noise and turning up the goodness, I think. Okay, so you mentioned America 250 and that Prager is planning for this. Katie, you have to know, is super excited. I am too, actually, for our country's birthday. I love a good birthday. I even love mine, even though I'm getting older. So what are we planning over at PragerU for the 250th birthday of the United States? All right, guys, I have been on a weight loss journey for, well, just about the last year or so. And I have to tell you, it was a struggle. You hear a lot of people give you a lot of advice, right? You've got keto, you've got high protein, you've got low carb, you've got high carb, you've got low calorie, you have calorie deficits, you have Ozempic, you have Mounjaro, you have metformin, you have all of these supplements and shots and things that are circulating out there. And it gets a little overwhelming and a little bit confusing. Now, I was having some success on my own, but it wasn't until I talked to Sebastian Gorka, Dr. G, you know, Katie's husband, and Mike Gallagher on our Patriots Alaska cruise. And they told me about how wonderful PhD weight loss really is. So I thought I would take a chance to get some help just to make sure that I was doing things right and that I was getting the most benefit from the time that I was spending really trying to put the focus on my health. And the PhD plan is amazing. First, you get a one-on-one consultation where they take into account your diet. Maybe you're vegan, maybe you're a meat eater. They take into account your family situation. They take into account your schedule and what your weight loss goals are. And of course, your why, which is really, really important. Are you doing this to just look better in your clothes? Are you doing this so that you go to the doctor and you get those great numbers that you've been looking for? Are you doing this to improve your health? For me, my why was about prioritizing myself. I spent a lot of time prioritizing everyone else and putting myself last. And I knew that that wasn't going to be sustainable. So I've been putting my health first and moving along with this program. So after your consultation, they send you some food. It's a combination of your own food and food that they send you from PhD, which makes it really easy so that you start developing habits that last a lifetime. And I have to tell you guys, I am losing just about 2 pounds every single week. So this weight loss is significant. It is real and it is scientifically backed and it is supportive. So instead of just putting you on your way with the program, you check in with a PhD expert, with a nutritionist who walks you through this process, helps you deal with challenges that life throws at you, because we all know it's not always smooth sailing. So if you'd like to join me, if you'd like to join Katie, Katie is a graduate, if you will, of PhD. She's lost 35 pounds and reached her goal weight and kept it off. I'm still working through the program. And I have to tell you, we would like you to do it with us. It is so much better to lose weight together as a happy woman family. And we want you to call My PhD as well for your free consultation. Don't wait another minute. Make today your day one. Not only will you see the scale move, but you're going to see your health overall improve because this knocks down inflammation. You're going to see your clothes fit better and you're going to get those compliments. When they start rolling in, I can tell you it feels really, really good. So call them today for your free consultation. Don't wait. Put yourself first. 864-644-1900. 864-644-1900. Feel better, reduce your blood pressure, reduce that high cholesterol, prioritize yourself, and make health your number one reason to go on this journey with all of us. 864-644-1900 for your free consultation at myphdweightloss.com.
So I think it's totally kismet because PragerU has been about celebrating America for the last, since we started about 13 years ago. We've created videos about the foundational series of what America is about, the signers of the Declaration. We have an entire president series that teaches about the different periods of time in American history. We have little kids' books, Otto's Tales about America's monuments. And so we have been shouting that America should be celebrated for years now. And we've been helping galvanizing parents, mama bears, papa bears, educators to do that exact thing. And so to celebrate our great nation's birthday in a couple of years seems totally fitting that PragerU would get involved, especially on the educational level, right? We want to not just have a birthday party with fireworks and hot dogs. America's 250th should be more than just hot dogs. It should be more than a celebration. It should be a celebration of our understanding and our strong commitment to what America is truly about. And how can you celebrate what America is truly about without understanding what America was founded upon? And so our goal is to do everything possible, as basic as creating a game board for families to acquire and be able to play at home and learn about the last 250 years of this incredible nation of ours, all the way through a series of videos, whether it's for kindergartners or for grown-ups, to learn the important moments that have created America and mostly the values that we stand by. We are going to do a ginormous sweepstakes. And so, I'm a mom, so I know that sometimes some bribery helps getting kids involved. And so we want everybody to get involved in learning about our great nation. So we're going to do a cash prize sweepstakes that people can watch the videos, pass a basic test. They can take it as many times as they want, not a problem. And then enter to win a raffle. We're going to do all kinds of interactive games on our website where you can ask questions and get some serious answers about our nation's history. And, we're looking to support the administration. I mean, the administration is very focused on celebrating America. And so we're listening, we're in lockstep, and we're here to serve so that, again, we can raise young Americans that love this great nation.
This is one aspect of President Trump being elected that is such a profound blessing that we really haven't talked about at all. But that is the fact that he is going to be our president for the semi-quincentennial. So next summer of 2026 is going to be this big celebration, the 250th anniversary. And what a lot of people don't realize is that whole process was completely taken over by the left during the Biden administration. The planning has been going on for years. And I mean, as many people know, many of our cultural institutions, in fact, I would say the vast majority of our cultural institutions, down to presidential homes, like presidential museums, even small, like private museums throughout the country, they all bought into this leftist narrative. So it's a big project now to kind of steer the ship back onto a healthy course. So I'm so grateful that you and PragerU are involved in that process. Are you hearing anything about what was I'm blanking on what it was called, the initiative that happened right before the Trump administration ended the first time that Larry Arnn was involved in. You know what I'm talking about?
The 1776
Commission. Yes.
Yes. Well, I mean, Katie, you brought up something very significant, and I think that your audience should know this because I'm not sure how aware they are of this. And can you imagine if the Donald Trump administration was not in charge of celebrating America at 250? I looked at what they were planning on doing, what the Biden administration was planning on doing for America at 250. Like, how do you love a country and want to completely transform and change her, right? That was what they were going to do. And so I just wake up every morning, I just go down on my knees and I thank God for saving our country, because really we got into this mess because of a cultural chaos and because of an educational hostage deal with our students. And now the administration is freeing the hostages, as in young Americans, and cleaning up the cultural chaos. But what they were planning on doing with America at 250 celebration, the plans that they had, I took a look at it and I was so horrified by it. And so we have 2 years to clean up the mess, to stop teaching young Americans that this country is not worth fighting for, because it is worth fighting for. And we are just going to put the foot on the gas and really not just clean up, but we need to rebuild. We need to rebuild what has been destroyed in the minds of young people. And so what a great opportunity that God has given us to, again, just go back to the basics and teach the truth about our Constitution and teach the truth about American history. We don't need to exaggerate. America is not perfect. There is no perfect country, but it is a great country. And so to be able to celebrate that, as opposed to having some, I don't even know what to describe. I don't know how to describe what the plans were that I saw. And it sounds like you know about that too. And so Americans should know that we've really been saved by God, because to teach young Americans that this is anything but a wonderful country is just a crime. It's criminal.
Well, unfortunately, we had a group of people, and still do, who think that America is the problem and not the solution. And so thank God, as you mentioned, that we've got President Trump in place. Thank God for organizations like yours at PragerU. Thank God for Dennis Prager. And thank goodness for you too, Marissa Strait. We thank you so much. Make sure you check out her podcast, Real Talk with Marissa Strait. And of course, you can give her a follow on X at Marissa Strait. You can also, and you should, check out, donate, support PragerU as much and as often as you can, because they are doing great, great work. It is important, and it's shaping the future, and it's working. You're seeing that change in our nation's young people. So, Marissa, thanks so much for being with us. We really appreciate you. You're welcome back anytime.
Love you both. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us. Don't forget to get Katie's book. It's called Next Gen Marxism, available in English and in Spanish. So I think you should read them both. Teach yourself a little, teach the language. And of course, check out our website, katiegorka.org. You can find her on X at Gorka Katie, and you can search for her on Facebook. Just look for Catherine Gorka. You can find me on Facebook and on Instagram as well at Jennifer Horn Radio, and always on X and on Truth at Jennifer Horn. We appreciate those 5-star reviews, and for sharing Happy Women with your friends. You can connect with us on all of the platforms at SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Happy Women. It's another episode of the Happy Women Podcast.